Mike Vrabel is supposed to be the defensive wizard. That's his side of the ball. And only once in his 6 years at Tennessee has he had a top 10 defense.
Do you think that Vrabel is one of the top coaches in the NFL right now on the market?
Okay, I'm going to kind of hedge my bet here, okay? Because I have two answers. One answer is, the answer is it depends on what team you are, okay? If you're a team like Atlanta, the Raiders, maybe even the Commanders, although they have a high draft pick, I think if you're a team like that that's just constantly in, mediocrity, picking 8 to 10 every season, I think Vrabel's a great hire. The Titans were irrelevant before they hired him. I think he will take you to a solid level and be knocking on the door of playoffs every single season. However, if you're a team with a young star quarterback, I wouldn't hire a defensive coach. I'm sorry. I know the NFL media loves Mike Vrabel. I do. I don't really understand it. He's a good coach, but they act like he's the second coming of Belichick. Ryan, he's really not. Let's look at these stats, okay? Mike Vrabel's head coaching record, 2018 to 2021, great. He turned this organization around, 41-24. The last 2 years, though, 13-21. Not all his fault. The GM traded A.J. Brown. They brought in a new GM. Him and ownership started having disputes. Word is he wanted total control. That never works out for coaches, and he's out. Okay, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt, right? Let's say, well, the record, whatever. But he's a defensive guy. He had Tannehill, Levis. How good can he really be in the AFC with that offense? At least he's got good defenses, because that's his specialty, right? If you're hiring a head coach, whatever their specialty is, that side of the ball has to be excellent. But was it? Here's Mike Vrabel's defenses while he's been at Tennessee. 8th his first year, and then 21st, 28th, 12th, 23rd, 18th. I don't know about you, but that doesn't strike me as a defensive mastermind that's bringing my team to new heights, does it? And just to say, everyone loves him. He did build a culture. He does have people go to war for him. He makes the players believe in him. But let's compare those numbers to other defensive head coaches. During that same 6-year span, let's compare him to Belichick and Tomlin. Vrabel cracks the top 10 once. Belichick does it 4 times. Tomlin does it 3 times. I think there is almost a myth about how good of a coach Mike Vrabel is. He is a good football coach. He's a culture builder. He has these guys buy in. He's kind of like Tomlin. The teams always play tough for him. The difference is Tomlin, being a defensive guy, usually has a pretty good defense. Mike Vrabel is supposed to be the defensive wizard. That's his side of the ball. And only once in his 6 years at Tennessee has he had a top 10 defense. I know everyone loves him, but am I the hot take guy here, or do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. And look, the facts back you up, right? Your points are valid. And that was a great breakdown. However, I don't know. I think Vrabel's still a good head coach.
I do too.
We've really only seen him, kind of shine at the Titans. We haven't been able to see him anywhere else, and we're going to get to do that because he's going to find a position somewhere else as a head coach.
Absolutely.
I mean, somebody's going to pick him up. I thought it would be the Patriots, but they seem to be stuck on Jared Mayo. And so let's just let them make their own mistakes. I think Vrabel would have been a great fit at the Patriots because he has the team. He's played there. He won Super Bowls there. He's just well known and well liked.
He sure was liking him a couple weeks ago.
He was maybe on his knees a little bit. But what I will say is I think there was a whole lot of back office stuff that happened. Amy Adams Strunk and Rand Carthen, I don't think Rand and Mike saw eye to eye. I think there's a whole lot of bickering there. I don't think the GM history for the Titans have not really set them up for success. Vrabel had very little control over any of that, it seemed. And I think that really wore on him over time. And he was kind of to the point of just throwing his hands up and saying, well, if this is what you're giving me, there was really no help from anywhere higher up for him.
No, you've prefaced everything you've said by I think. Ryan, you don't think. That's just correct. Well, everything you
it's
said,
facts, right?
It's 100% correct. There was an article in The Athletic this past week. I wish I could remember the author because it was so good, but it kind of broke down what happened with Vrabel and Amy. Strunk?
Amy Adams
Strunk. Weird name. And that's coming from the guy whose last name's a coffee maker. Anyway, kind of to break it down the way he did, when the previous GM was fired, not Carthen, but the guy who traded A.J. Brown, when he was fired, Vrabel wanted someone promoted from within to be GM. The same guy that ran the 2023 draft. His name's Cowden, I believe. And Vrabel also wanted full control over the roster. He thought he had earned it. I think no coach should have full control over the roster. We've seen that be a mistake in New England. You should have a GM. I want the coach to coach. He can have a say, but we want a GM. When Carthen was about to be hired, Vrabel told Amy Shrunk he didn't think Carthen was ready to be a GM. That rubbed her the wrong way, and apparently his visit to New England really rubbed her the wrong way. So he did a couple things that got under her skin, and they never talked it out. It started to fester. I know a lot of people say Vrabel got fired, and he did, but it's kind of like saying, oh, the kid got expelled from school, but he went and pulled down his pants in front of the teacher and pissed on the wall. He kind of wanted to get expelled from school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're writing graffiti on the teacher's desk and, oh my God, how can we believe our little Billy got expelled? Well, yeah, look at what he did. I think it's a similar situation. I think he wanted out. I think they wanted him out. I will say so you're 100% right. Everything you said is exactly what happened. And there was the front office stuff, but I don't like that he was in there asking for full control over the roster. I get it to some degree because they've made a lot of roster blunders while he's been there, but I just would never want my coach having that.
Well, I think that's also maybe a little inexperience on his behalf. I think maybe he was asking for too much, and he just doesn't really know how to kind of navigate that situation too well yet. Because in the grand scheme of head coaches, like Vrabel's still a younger head coach.
Yes.
And, so I think, and then also him being a player, like he's used to having input into a team of some sort more than maybe more than he did as a head coach. But the GMs, the owner, they have screwed this Titans team.
The A.J. Brown trade is the perfect, it puts it all together, sums it up.
Would you say worst trade in the last 15 years in NFL?
I don't know if I could go that far because I don't remember their compensation, but like
the last 5 for sure.
Russell Wilson trade's up there, okay, but it's not good though to give away that player, a star wide receiver in their prime when you don't have any other wide receivers and you've got a quarterback that needs help. It's not a good move. The video when it happens and he's like stretching his neck like Vrabel, he can't believe they're doing it. So I agree. I think he wanted to see it run right, and he knew he probably couldn't do a worse job. But let me flip it around to you before we wrap up the show. I said if I was hiring him, it depends on the team. If I was like Atlanta or something, I could take a flyer on him. I'm telling you, man, I don't think I would hire Vrabel over even a guy like Bobby Slowick. Now, we don't know. A great coordinator does not make a good head coach. It's a different job. It is. But the fact that he is a defensive guy and his defenses are, in the 20s most years, that's a concern for me. And maybe you can put it all on the Titans front office. Maybe I'm being a little harsh. I know he builds a culture, but unless you are a disastrous team needing a full rebuild, I just wouldn't touch a defensive head coach. Would you, if you were hiring a coach, are you genuinely going to pick him over one of these offensive guys?
I think it would probably come down to my division, I think is what it would come down to. If I could afford to have a defensive coach
like Atlanta,
where I could kind of compete within my division and still, have a shot at making the playoffs.
In the AFC, you can't.
That's out of the picture. I thought we already knew that.
Right.
It's going to be in the NFC where he gets a job likely. And, you look at somebody like Atlanta and, you could afford, just like I said earlier, to take a risk on a coach. And really, I think Atlanta's in a really prime position to take either which route they want. I mean, they could go either way. They could go with a Slowick. They could go with a Vrabel. Mm-hmm. And you could be okay in 2 years if neither one of them works out. Because you're still probably going to gain draft picks.
Well, they've got a good roster. They just don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, you're still going to get early draft picks with either of the guys if you don't succeed, if you have losing record, then, I mean, you're going to get higher draft picks. So then you get your guy in there, right? So even if a guy sucks for 2 years, no big deal. Draft some good players, get a really good guy in there, and then spend your money, in a really good head coach. But it's always a risk picking a defensive guy in 2024, man. Like it's a huge risk because it's an offensive league right now.
Right.
And even the NFC is starting to turn a little bit toward the offensive side of the ball. We saw it more in 2023 than we did in 2022.
Sure.
22, NFC was like a defensive league all the way, and the Eagles were just the offensive powerhouse. But you look in 23 now, and it's like, okay,
goes to the Colts, yeah.
Yeah, now things have changed, right? And so I think you're starting to see the NFC have to start putting more stock in the offensive side of the ball, and taking a risk on Vrabel is just that, a risk.
It's a risk.
But I think it would pay off because if Vrabel could get somebody in there who could, run the offense like a Slowick or somebody like that.
Which he did. When Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator of the Titans, he was excellent. So, we've seen him hire good staff.